Have you ever wondered why, in the face of chaos, pain, and uncertainty, our first impulse is to look up, close our eyes, and seek something that transcends the visible? This almost universal tendency, present in all cultures and ages, is not just an emotional reflex. It's a profound echo of the structure of our own brain, which seems to have been designed to connect with the invisible. The human being, when stripped of the distractions of the world, reveals an ancient yearning to touch the eternal, even if they don't fully understand what that means. And it's in this silent impulse, this intimate whisper, that the journey towards what we call a miracle begins. We are not talking about a miracle in the folkloric sense, but about that radical change of internal state, that quiet shift in the soul which, almost imperceptibly, alters the course of life. The true miracle is not always a breaking of natural laws, but often a profound reconciliation with them. The search for this kind of miracle has less to do with religion and more to do with emotional survival and spiritual expansion. It is the call of something within us that knows there is more than what the senses can perceive. Throughout history, men and women who have touched this invisible space have reported one thing in common: the feeling that they have entered a sacred place within themselves. Mystics, saints, scientists, and ordinary people speak of the same inner room, where prayer ceases to be spoken words and becomes a state of consciousness. This space, referred to by Jesus as the secret room, is not a physical room, but a place in the mind and spirit where everything falls silent, where the connection is direct, where no language is necessary because communication occurs on a more subtle level. But what exactly happens in the brain when we access this state? Before we dive into neurotheology and its practices, it's important to understand why humanity, even in its most skeptical era, still yearns for contact with the transcendent. We are surrounded by technology, data, and logic, but we can't shake off the feeling that there's something more. This restlessness is not an evolutionary mistake, it's a clue. Recent research in neuroscience suggests that the human mind has specific areas associated with spirituality. They not only process the idea of God or the divine, but are also activated when we feel compassion, gratitude, and deep states of love. That is, our brain seems biologically prepared for the experience of the miracle. In fact, the inner call for a miracle is a cry from the nervous system for coherence. When everything around us seems in disarray, we seek an internal alignment that returns us to our axis. Prayer, in this context, becomes a tool for neural and energetic reconnection. There is evidence that people who practice deep prayer regularly have a higher density of gray matter in brain regions associated with empathy and self-control. Moreover, their stress levels are lower and their immune response is stronger. Coincidence? Science doesn't think so. This spiritual impulse can emerge strongly in times of loss, suffering, or despair, and curiously, it is at this point of vulnerability that many report transcendent experiences. But why is it that the miracle often is born at rock bottom? Perhaps because, when everything falls apart, it's as if the ego temporarily dissolves, making room for something greater to enter. And it is at this moment, when control is abandoned, that we access the secret room, not by force, but by surrender. And in this surrender, the brain changes. The sincere prayer, when made with absolute presence, triggers a series of biological reactions that go beyond what was imagined. It changes the breathing pattern, calms the autonomic nervous system, stimulates the vagus nerve, and triggers a release of neurotransmitters that promote well-being and emotional stability. It's as if the brain enters another operational state. There is a partial shutdown of the prefrontal cortex, which governs logical thinking and critical self-assessment, and an increase in activity in areas related to the experience of unity and transcendence. In other words, we literally stop being just ourselves, and we merge with something greater. But this phenomenon is not limited to religious practitioners. People who have never attended a temple also report states of spontaneous prayer in moments of emergency or ecstasy. This reinforces the idea that the impulse towards the miraculous is universal and does not require a specific doctrine. What it does require indeed is surrender and presence, and this surrender is something the brain learns. When we train focus, breathing, and silence, We are literally teaching our nervous system to more easily access this state of deep connection. It's like building a neuronal pathway towards the divine. Science already understands that the brain is highly malleable. Neuroplasticity shows that regular practices of prayer or meditation create new neural pathways and strengthen existing connections. This means that spirituality can be trained, not as a belief, but as an experience. The miracle then ceases to be a coincidence and becomes an accessible skill, an inner tool that everyone possesses, but few use consciously. The secret room is available, but it requires a key, the willingness to go beyond the surface of the mind. And there is something even more fascinating. Many accounts of real miracles, those transformative ones, involve precisely people who decided to be silent, who entered a state of total surrender and allowed a new order to settle within them. This leads us to rethink what a miracle really is. Perhaps it is not an external intervention, but the result of a fine-tuning between our internal system and a greater intelligence that permeates everything. And when this tuning occurs, everything changes. Cells change, perceptions change, entire realities are redesigned. That's why we need to revisit the meaning of prayer and its relationship with the brain. It's not just a spiritual practice, but an ancient technology for accessing inner realignment. Each time we enter the secret room, we alter the electromagnetic field of our heart, influence our brain chemistry, and impact our vibrational state. Science is just beginning to map what spiritual traditions have always intuitively known. But now we have data, graphs, brain images that show. The miracle begins when we become silent. In the end, the search for miracles is a legitimate attempt to restore inner order amidst external chaos. And more than that, it is a sign that, on some level, we already know that a miracle is not something we wait for, but something we activate. And the key is within. It lies in accessing deep consciousness, in surrender, in full presence. It's in the exact moment when, without knowing how, we feel that we are not alone. And when that happens, the impossible no longer seems so distant. In the Sermon on the Mount, one of the most enigmatic and powerful passages in the New Testament, Jesus instructs, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." This phrase, often repeated, is rarely understood in all its symbolic depth. The secret room that Jesus speaks of is not a physical place. It is not a common room, but a state of consciousness, a hidden point within the human soul where the noise of the world ceases and inner listening is born. The invitation is clear. Withdraw from the surface, abandon the external theatricality, and dive into the invisible. The key to the miracle begins with access to this inner space. Throughout the centuries, mystics, monks, and contemplatives have interpreted this room as a metaphor for the innermost sanctuary of the soul. In Gnostic texts and apocryphal Gospels, the same concept appears under different names: the inner temple, the place of silence, the sacred space of the heart. In all these traditions, there is the recognition that to access higher realities, one must first delve within oneself. This descent is not easy, as it confronts us with our own mental noise, with the restlessness of the untrained mind. But it is precisely in this confrontation that transformation begins. The modern brain, constantly bombarded by external stimuli, has become a battlefield of information. The mind races from one thought to another, from a notification to an image, rarely finding rest. The proposal of the secret room is precisely to break this pattern. It is the deliberate creation of a space where the brain can reorganize, where thoughts cease and a new perception emerges. This perception is not logical, but intuitive. It is not based on words, but on presence. When the mind enters this state, a silent reconfiguration begins. And it is at this point that prayer ceases to be a petition and transforms into communion. In esoteric Judaism, the Kabbalah speaks of the sacred sanctuary within the heart, where the divine spark rests. The Sufis, mystics of Islam, describe the qalb, the spiritual heart, as the dwelling place of God within the human being. Hinduism presents the cave of the heart as the point where the lower self dissolves and the higher self reveals itself. All these symbols point to the same place, a hidden center where the divine manifests not as an idea, but as a living experience. Modern science, especially neurotheology, begins to map these internal states as specific brain configurations, patterns of activity that repeat in mystics from different traditions, even when they have never had contact with each other. This room is activated when attention is redirected from the periphery to the center. Neurologically, this corresponds to a shift in the brain's attention network, from the default mode network to states of internal focus, characterized by greater connectivity between the limbic system and the medial prefrontal cortex. This allows not only introspection, but a sense of unity and transcendence. Studies with experienced meditators show that when this region is deeply stimulated, the sense of separation between the self and the world disappears. The individual feels part of something bigger, as if they have penetrated into a consciousness that completely encompasses them. This is the threshold of the miracle. Many spiritual traditions use symbols to represent this inner sacred space. The Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple, accessed only by the high priest once a year, was an empty space where it was believed the divine presence dwelled. This idea echoes in the human brain. There is a region called the precuneus, located in the posterior medial part of the brain, that strongly activates during states of self-reflection and deep mystical experiences. Scientists believe that this area is related to the experience of the spiritual self. It is like a veil between the sensory world and the world of pure consciousness. When this veil is surpassed, the miracle is not only felt, it is understood as natural. The challenge, however, lies in reaching this point. Most people live trapped by the discursive mind, the incessant flow of thoughts that prevent them from perceiving what lies beyond. This is why Jesus insists on closing the door. This symbolic gesture represents the act of cutting off contact with external stimuli and turning completely inward. It's not just physical isolation, but a profound withdrawal of attention. In this withdrawal, the process of mental deceleration and energetic realignment begins. The brain, in this state, enters alpha waves and then theta, frequencies associated with creativity, intuition, and healing. Studies conducted with Tibetan monks and Carmelite nuns show that during intense and prolonged prayers, there is a significant reduction in the activity of the parietal lobe, responsible for spatial orientation. This suggests that the sense of physical boundaries between the body and the environment disappears. The individual no longer knows where they end and where the world begins. This merging is described as an experience of unity, a state in which the ego dissolves and an expanded consciousness arises. This state is exactly what the ancients referred to as communion with God, entry into the sacred temple, or awakening of the heart. The presence in the secret room is not necessarily accompanied by visions or extraordinary phenomena. Often, it is an absolute silence, an unshakable peace that cannot be described, only experienced. And it is precisely in this silence that the brain enters states of heart coherence, hemispheric synchrony, and the release of neurotransmitters such as serotonin and melatonin. This not only generates well-being, but also states of deep regeneration. It's as if the body is put into total repair mode. At more advanced levels, practitioners report experiences of profound insight, perceptions beyond time and space, and even spontaneous healing. Entering this state does not require years of practice, but rather surrender and intention. The key to the secret room is not in external formulas, but in the willingness to stop and listen. Listen to what is beyond the noise. Listen to what has always been there, waiting to be noticed. This listening changes everything. It restructures the mind, organizes the emotion, calms the body. And more than that, it reactivates the capacity for spiritual perception that, in many, remains dormant. When this happens, the individual does not just feel the miracle, they become the miracle. Perhaps that's why the ancients used to say that the kingdom of God does not come with an outward appearance. It is within you, and the path to access it is simple, yet profound. Go into your room, close the door, and pray in secret. This secret is not merely the absence of an audience, it's the mystery of a place that can only be accessed by the Spirit, a place that cannot be explained, but once accessed, forever changes those who find it. This is the true miracle, the discovery that we don't need to go anywhere to touch the divine. All you need to do is close your eyes, become silent, and descend. The rest just happens. When a human being enters into deep prayer, something extraordinary begins to happen behind the invisible veil of the flesh. The brain, this complex machine of perception, emotion, and identity, initiates a quiet process of reorganization. Far from being merely a religious ritual or an emotional comfort, prayer transforms, in the hands of modern neuroscience, into a measurable and profound phenomenon. For decades, scientists have tried to understand what exactly happens in the brain during intense spiritual practices, and the findings challenge skepticism and confirm what mystics have always asserted. Prayer not only touches the divine, it profoundly alters human biology. The field of neurotheology emerged as a bridge between spirituality and science, with pioneers like Dr. Andrew Newberg, who deeply studied the brains of Buddhist monks, Franciscan nuns, and experienced meditators. His neuroimaging studies revealed that during contemplative prayer, certain regions of the brain light up while others go quiet. The frontal lobe, responsible for focus and attention, intensifies its activity, while the parietal lobe, in charge of the notion of time and space, decreases its operation. This partial disconnection from the sense of separation is what allows the experience of unity, a state where the person praying no longer feels distinct from the universe, but part of it. Furthermore, deep prayer promotes a flow of neurochemical substances that directly affect physical and emotional health. The release of dopamine, associated with motivation and pleasure, increases. Serotonin levels, which influence mood and sleep, rise. Oxytocin, known as the hormone of love and connection, is released, creating feelings of closeness to something greater. The brain, literally, enters a biochemical state of healing, and this state does not depend on any specific belief. It can be induced by any practice that involves focus, intention, and inner surrender. The entire body begins to operate at a new frequency. Research also shows that the brain in a state of prolonged prayer undergoes functional reorganization. The autonomic nervous system, which regulates involuntary functions such as breathing and heart rate, begins to operate in parasympathetic mode, the mode of relaxation and recovery. This reduces cortisol levels, the stress hormone, and increases heart rate variability, a key indicator of emotional resilience and physical health. The immune system is strengthened, blood flows more efficiently, cells enter a state of regeneration. In other words, prayer, when practiced deeply, becomes a powerful medicine. On the level of brain waves, studies show that during moments of meditative prayer, the brain shifts from beta waves, associated with active thinking and worry, to alpha and theta waves, which represent deep relaxation, introspection, and creativity. These waves are predominant in young children and in adults during states of dreaming, intuition, and deep meditation. It is in this neurological environment that the mind becomes fertile for new patterns and the unconscious opens to receive higher impressions. Prayer in this state ceases to be repetition and becomes reprogramming. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself, is strongly activated in these states. This means that neural connections related to fear, guilt, or trauma can gradually be replaced with patterns of peace, trust, and love. When someone prays with elevated feeling and conscious focus, they are literally carving new brain pathways. It's as if, with each prayer, a new path is being built between the mind and the soul, and over time, this path transforms into a road that redefines who the person is. Identity expands, and old boundaries lose their power. But the brain does not only respond to the content of the prayer, but also to the accompanying emotional state. Research indicates that feelings of reverence, gratitude, and admiration activate specific areas of the brain linked to compassion, empathy, and the perception of purpose. The more sincere the prayer, the deeper its neurobiological repercussions. The brain recognizes emotional truth and responds to it. Therefore, it is not the mechanical repetition of words that transforms, but the authentic immersion in elevated states of consciousness. A heartfelt prayer is more potent than a spoken prayer. Furthermore, the human brain operates as an electromagnetic organ. The electric currents generated by neuronal activity create magnetic fields that expand beyond the skull, interacting with the environment. Studies of coherence between brain waves of people in joint prayer show that these fields can synchronize, creating a sort of unified field among the participants. This scientifically confirms what spiritual traditions already knew. Shared prayer has multiplied power because it creates an invisible network of coherent energy capable of affecting matter and mind. It's important to highlight that these findings are not speculative theory, but are based on EEG, fMRI, tomography, and hormonal measurements. Science can now observe in real time what happens to a person when they enter a state of deep prayer. And the effects are not just internal. There is increasing evidence that prayer, especially when directed with clear intention, can influence systems beyond the body itself, such as experiments that show changes in cellular growth patterns, water's crystalline structures, and even statistical records of large-scale events during global meditations. The brain, therefore, is not a mere passive receiver. It is a catalyst of realities. When trained for elevated states of prayer, it transforms into a high-frequency antenna, picking up, translating, and amplifying impressions from the subtle field. What we call a miracle in many cases is the perfect convergence between a mind in a state of spiritual coherence and a field of quantum possibilities. This convergence is not random, but can be provoked through sincere, consistent, and profound prayer. The brain becomes a mirror of the sacred. There is an even more fascinating component: spiritual memory. Studies suggest that mystical experiences activate regions linked to autobiographical memory, indicating that the brain can record moments of transcendence as events more real than ordinary daily life. In other words, prayer can mark the brain with an imprint of eternity, creating impressions so intense that they become anchors of permanent change. When someone accesses this type of experience, it is not forgotten. It becomes part of the being, a turning point from which life will never be the same again. This neuroarchitecture of prayer leads us to understand that the brain is not an obstacle to spirituality, but its closest ally. When well directed, it allows access to the secret room with increasing clarity, stability, and depth. The mind then ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a living temple. Prayer transforms into a journey of conscious reprogramming of the inner reality, capable of overflowing into the outer world. Biology and spirit dance in sync, and the miracle becomes inevitable. There is a language that precedes words, a form of perception that is not based on logic, grammar, or analysis, but on pure direct experience. When a human being engages in deep prayer and accesses elevated states of consciousness, they not only connect with the divine, they translate it neurologically. The brain, although limited by its physical nature, possesses structures capable of interpreting invisible realities. And it is precisely at this point of contact between the material and the immaterial that science begins to find traces of a hidden language, a grammar of the soul where the miracle is understood not as a rupture, but as an update in perception. During states of intense prayer, the activity in the temporal lobe significantly intensifies. This region of the brain is strongly associated with religious experiences, deep emotional memories, and the feeling of spiritual presence. Studies reveal that individuals subjected to subtle electrical stimuli in this area report visions, feelings of divine connection, the sensation of being watched by a loving entity, or even out-of-body experiences. But the most impressive thing is that such experiences, when spontaneous and accompanied by prayer or meditation, are described with rich symbolism, as if the brain translates the transcendent through images, sensations, and metaphors. The brain, therefore, functions as a decoder of the sacred. It does not create the divine experience, it interprets it. Just as a radio does not manufacture sound, but only captures it and transforms it into music. The human brain captures high-frequency patterns that, in its current structure, can only be translated into comprehensible forms. That's why many people see lights, feel subtle touches, or hear internal words during moments of deep prayer. The experience of the divine is real, but the brain needs to give it a perceptible form, using the resources it has: symbols, emotions, sensations, images. The standard neural network, a brain circuit that kicks into gear during rest, introspection, and imagination, also plays a crucial role in the mystical experience. When a person enters meditative or contemplative prayer states, this network activates intensely, allowing memories, internal images, and deep feelings to organize into a subjective narrative of transcendence. It is in this field that symbolic visions, profound insights, and intuitive messages are born. These are not hallucinations, but internal constructions of meaning from frequencies received by subtler levels of perception. Another essential point is the way the brain handles time and space during these states. The decrease in activity in the posterior parietal lobe, observed in practitioners during deep prayers, causes the sensation of location and temporal linearity to disappear. The person feels out of time, in an eternal present. It's as if the past, the future, and the now collapse into a single perception of eternity. This timelessness is often reported by mystics as one of the hallmarks of a true spiritual experience. The brain, by disconnecting from its usual coordinates, makes room for the infinite. Near-death experiences, NDEs, offer a fascinating parallel. Many who have undergone NDEs report sensations similar to those provoked by intense prayer. Perception of intense light, feeling of absolute love, life review, absence of pain, and a profound peace. Studies show that during these experiences there is electrical hyperactivity in regions of the brain that also activate during deep meditation states. This suggests that the brain has specific circuits for the experience of transcendence, as if it were pre-programmed to access higher dimensions of reality when certain triggers are activated. This language of the infinite does not operate by linear logic. It manifests through archetypes, symbols, and recurring patterns. Carl Jung, while studying the dreams and visions of his patients, noticed that many spiritual symbols were universal, appearing in people from different cultures and religions. These symbols, such as light, fire, ladder, river, divine mother, starry sky, are not just cultural constructs, but reflections of deep inner patterns that the brain uses to communicate experiences beyond common understanding. When someone sees a bright light during prayer, this light may symbolize healing, divine presence, wisdom, all at the same time without contradiction. The brain, in its natural state, operates based on duality: right/wrong, good/evil, beginning/end. But during deep prayer, this paradigm begins to dissolve. The cerebral hemispheres, often operating in an unbalanced way, come into sync. The left side, rational and analytical, gives way to the right, intuitive and visual. This harmony allows for the emergence of non-duality states, where the individual perceives themselves and the whole as one. This is the point where the miracle happens, when there's no longer separation between the one who prays and what is prayed for, between the seeker and the object of the search. Modern physics, especially quantum theory, offers metaphors that echo these discoveries. The idea that reality is, at its core, energy and constant vibration, and that the observer influences the observed, resonates with the notion that prayer alters both internal and external states. When the mind resonates with higher frequencies, the brain translates this into sensations, emotions, and images that shape the prayer's experience. What was invisible becomes perceptible, and what was impossible becomes reality. Prayer, then, becomes a portal between dimensions of consciousness. Evidence suggests that profound mystical experiences leave lasting marks on the brain. The density of gray matter increases in areas related to self-control, empathy, and future planning. The amygdala, the fear center, becomes less reactive. The medial prefrontal cortex, associated with self-observation and a sense of purpose, strengthens. In other words, the language of the infinite not only reveals the divine, it transforms the human. The experience of God, translated by the brain, becomes an agent of neurological, emotional, and spiritual evolution. This process of translating the divine is personal and non-transferable. No experience will be identical to another, as each brain interprets the sacred according to its history, emotions, and archetypes. However, the effects are universal: deep peace, mental clarity, a sense of belonging to the whole, and often physical or emotional healing. What was once mystery becomes silent certainty. Prayer, at this level, is not seeking something. It reveals. It shows what has always been there, but was hidden by the turmoil of the mind. Ultimately, understanding how the brain translates the divine does not diminish the sanctity of the experience. On the contrary, it reveals that we were designed, in essence, to touch the eternal. Prayer is the language of the soul, and the brain, when aligned, becomes its most faithful translator. Science and spirit, far from being opposites, dance together in this mysterious space where the invisible becomes real, and the miracle ceases to be an exception and becomes a natural expression of a human being in a state of unity. This is the true language of the infinite, one that is not spoken, but lived. Everything in the universe vibrates. Every thought, emotion, cell, and molecule is in constant oscillation. Modern science, observing reality at its most fundamental level, has discovered that matter is nothing more than energy condensed at different frequency levels. This discovery, already intuited by ancient spiritual traditions, sheds new light on prayer and miracles. If everything vibrates, then prayer is a conscious frequency adjustment. It is the internal realignment that allows tuning into higher vibrational patterns, which in turn manifest new realities. The miracle, from this perspective, is not an extraordinary event, but the result of an internal vibration in harmony with a new order of possibilities. The brain, the heart, and the electromagnetic field of the human body function as frequency emitters and receivers. Studies show that the heart generates a magnetic field up to 100 times more powerful than that of the brain and directly influences the central nervous system. When one enters a state of deep prayer, there is a synchronization between cardiac and brain activity. This phenomenon, known as heart coherence, creates a stable vibrational field which resonates with the surrounding environment and with other human beings. This coherence is the foundation for what mystics referred to as divine grace, an invisible force that alters external circumstances through internal vibration. Brain waves play a fundamental role in this process. During the common state of wakefulness, the brain predominantly operates on beta waves associated with scattered attention and critical thinking. However, when prayer reaches true depth, the brain switches to alpha and subsequently theta waves. At these frequencies, the mind enters a state of heightened receptivity, expansive creativity, and profound introspection. It is at these levels that the most authentic spiritual communication occurs. Words cease to be necessary. What emerges is a vibrational state where the individual praying feels as if they are within a larger field of consciousness, as though they have been absorbed by an invisible presence. Spiritual traditions have always recognized the power of sounds and vibration. Mantras, chants, psalms, and intonations are not just cultural expressions, but precise tools for tuning the internal frequency. Sound, when interacting with the nervous system, directly alters the body's vibrational pattern. Certain tones induce relaxation, others trigger states of ecstasy or reverence. When intoned with intention, these sounds become keys to accessing subtler levels of consciousness. The Amen, the Om, the Hallelujah, the Shalom, all carry, in their vibrational root, a resonance code that awakens deep layers of the psyche and spirit. But vibrational adjustment doesn't just depend on sound. Visualization, when used accurately, acts as a frequency tool. When a person prays while visualizing a desired reality, with all possible sensory details, they are sending a clear vibrational signature to the quantum field. The brain, not distinguishing between real and imagined experience, responds with hormonal release, neural reorganization, and activation of emotional networks. This creates an internal condition that aligns with the desired state and, consequently, attracts reality patterns that vibrate in harmony with this new frequency. At deeper levels of prayer, time loses its rigidity. The mind enters a state of flow and perception shifts beyond linearity. In these moments, it becomes possible to feel the future as something accessible, the past as a malleable field, and the present as a point of absolute power. It is in this state that the miracle begins to manifest, as the frequency of the mind aligns with the frequency of the field of infinite possibilities. What seemed distant or impossible begins to silently shape itself into the fabric of reality, not by force, but by attunement. The practice of vibrational prayer, or frequency prayer, is not new. Ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians, Hindus, Mayans, and Tibetans used precise techniques to elevate the vibration of the body and mind. The use of crystals, colors, incenses, sacred geometries, and specific sounds were methods to achieve altered states of consciousness. They understood that the universe responded not to words, but to the frequency generated by them. This understanding was preserved in esoteric orders, mystery schools, and silent contemplative practices throughout the centuries, even in the face of religious oppression and the rationalization of the sacred. Quantum physics, in studying subatomic particles, has revealed that matter responds to the observer. The simple act of observing alters the behavior of particles. This suggests that consciousness is not just an emergent phenomenon of the brain, but an active force in the fabric of reality. When a praying mind observes a result with high emotion, such as healing, liberation, or transformation, it sends out a coherent vibration that influences the field around it. The miracle, then, ceases to be something that happens and becomes something that is created. The human body, when in a state of deep prayer, transforms into a transmission instrument. The vibration generated is not limited to the physical body. It expands in the form of subtle fields, crosses space, and affects other beings. Studies with electromagnetic measuring devices confirm that people in a state of vibrational coherence positively affect their surroundings, reducing tensions, harmonizing relationships, and promoting spontaneous healing. This is why many traditions speak of the power of a peaceful soul. This peace is a frequency, and this frequency is a language that the universe understands. The secret of the miracle, therefore, lies in the conscious repetition of elevated vibrational states. When a human being commits to the daily practice of deep prayer, they are not just talking to God, they are training their vibration. They are reprogramming their internal frequency to become compatible with patterns of order, beauty, love, and abundance. Over time, their reality begins to silently adjust to this new vibration. People drift away or draw near. Opportunities arise. Illnesses disappear. Intuitions intensify. Everything changes, not because it was asked for, but because it adjusted. This is the spiritual code. Every prayer is a frequency, and every frequency generates a response. The universe is a field of vibrational response, and the one who learns to pray with coherence, presence, and elevated emotion becomes a master of reality. They do not need to manipulate the external. They transform the internal, and the rest follows. The miracle, then, is not an exception. It is a consequence. A natural consequence of a being that has become harmonious with the heart of creation. Prayer in this state is the silent sound of the soul resonating with the eternal. At the heart of every true prayer, there is something that goes beyond words: intention. Intention is the silent force behind the gesture, the energy that moves the invisible, the vibrational seed that, when cast into the field of consciousness, begins to reorganize realities. When science approached the study of spirituality, one of the most revealing discoveries was that clear intention, coupled with a heightened emotional state, not only modifies internal chemistry, but also influences structures outside of the physical body. This means that the supplicant, when aware of what they feel and desire, becomes a creative agent, not in a mystical or poetic way, but in a real and measurable manner. Quantum physics, through interference experiments and the famous double-slit experiment, has revealed something fundamental. The observer's consciousness alters the behavior of particles. This leads us to the inevitable conclusion that the act of observing, when done with focus and presence, impacts the structure of reality. Prayer, in this context, is more than communication with the divine. It is an exercise in focused observation, charged with intentional emotion, capable of affecting the field of possibilities. Intention, when nourished with true feeling, becomes a vector of manifestation. The miracle, then, does not arise by chance, but by internal design. Bruce Lipton, a cellular biologist, has demonstrated that beliefs directly affect cellular biology. His research shows that the chemical environment around cells changes according to an individual's dominant thoughts and emotions. This means that a prayer that springs from a true belief and clear intention can alter, at the cellular level, the processes of regeneration, healing, and balance. The mind, when in coherence with the heart, emits electromagnetic signals that are picked up by the nervous system and translated into biochemical commands. It is science itself confirming that intentional thought, when emotionally charged, modifies matter. Dr. Joe Dispenza has deepened this understanding by demonstrating, through EEG studies and brain scans, that the combination of clear intention with elevated emotion produces visible changes in the brain and body. During his retreats, participants learn to pray not from a place of lack, but from a place of anticipated gratitude, as if the miracle has already occurred. This state generates a vibrational signature of completeness, which not only boosts the immune system and improves inflammatory markers, but also generates synchronous events in external reality. People report spontaneous healings, profound emotional transformations, and manifestations that, from a conventional perspective, would be inexplicable. The key for intention to become creative lies in coherence. The conscious mind may desire something, but if the emotional body is vibrating with fear, doubt, or resentment, the prayer becomes fragmented. Reality responds not to the declared desire, but to the dominant vibration. That's why many do not experience the miracle, not for lack of faith, but for absence of alignment. The most powerful prayer is the one where mind, heart, and body are united in the same frequency, sending a clear and unmistakable signal to the universe. This signal is understood as an order, not a plea. There is a radical difference between asking and co-creating. Asking stems from the assumption of lack, of separation, of distance between the supplicant and the desired object. Co-creating, on the other hand, acknowledges the essential unity with the creative source and manifests the intention from a state of belonging. When one prays with the certainty that one is already part of the desired reality, the energy field responds with resonance, not resistance. This is the prayer that Jesus exemplified when he said, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and so it will be." The belief of having already received is the essence of creative prayer. Various studies conducted by groups such as the Global Coherence Initiative and the HeartMath Institute have demonstrated that collective intention amplifies the field of influence. When people come together with a common purpose and achieve emotional coherence, the effects are recorded in environmental sensors around the planet. During collective meditation events, reductions in crime rates, stabilization of Earth's magnetic fields, and an increase in the participants' heart rate variability have been observed. This reinforces the idea that intentional prayer is an active force in the quantum field, capable of affecting not only the individual but the collective. The intention, to be truly creative, needs to be felt in the body. It's not enough to think about healing. One must feel healed. It's not enough to desire peace. One needs to vibrate peace. Prayer should be a complete sensory and emotional experience. By involving all senses, the brain enters a state of real simulation and sends signals to the body as if the event were actually happening. This generates an information field that propagates beyond the physical body, connecting with events, people, and circumstances that resonate with that frequency. Reality bends in the face of a human being who becomes whole in their intention. The practice of prayer as creation requires consistency, not as mechanical repetition, but as the cultivation of a vibrational state. Each time one enters into prayer with clear intention and elevated emotion, a neural network is strengthened, an electromagnetic field is reinforced, and the body is trained to inhabit a new identity. Over time, the mind stabilizes, the body adjusts, and the surrounding field reorganizes. Intention becomes pattern. The new reality manifests more easily. The miracle, once occasional, becomes natural. Prayer ceases to be an emergency resource and becomes a technology of manifestation. The coherence between intention, emotion, and frequency is the new spiritual alphabet. In it, words have less power than states of being. The more a person becomes what they pray for, the quicker their reality adjusts. It's the universe's informational field responding to the dominant vibration, not the verbal request. Silence charged with intention is stronger than 1,000 sentences spoken with doubt. The feeling of already being, already having, already existing is the code that opens the doors to the impossible. When a human being masters the art of intentional prayer, they enter a state of conscious co-creation. They understand that reality is malleable, that the field responds, that the brain obeys the heart, and that the body manifests the pattern that the spirit upholds. This awareness removes the prayer from the position of victim and places them as the author of their experience. The miracle, then, is inevitable, because it's no longer about waiting for something, but becoming the frequency of what is desired. And by becoming, everything around responds, not by magic, but by vibrational law. The grandeur of deep prayer and its impacts on the mind, body, and external reality should not be limited to isolated moments or occasional rituals. True spirituality, the kind that transforms lives and sustains continuous miracles, needs to be practical, daily, and integrated. The secret room is not a sanctuary that is visited only in times of crisis or celebration, but a state of consciousness that can and should be accessed at any time, anywhere. It is at this point that theory meets experience and knowledge turns into wisdom. Making spirituality a routine is anchoring the sacred in time. It's turning the ordinary into a gateway to the extraordinary. To access this state of spiritual depth in everyday life, the first step is to establish a clear intention to create an inner space of silence. This does not depend on temples, incense, or clothing. It is about a personal decision to withdraw, to distance oneself from mental and emotional noise, and dive into the calmest point of being. Creating a secret room at home, a quiet, clean corner free from distractions, can be a significant physical support. But the real temple is in the inner disposition. Even amidst the chaos of daily life, it is possible, with practice, to activate this state with a simple closing of the eyes and conscious breathing. The second pillar is breathing. Breathing is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between the body and the spirit. Deep breathing techniques, such as diaphragmatic breathing, heart coherence, or square breathing, help to slow down the nervous system and prepare the body for heightened states of perception. 5 minutes of focused breathing is enough to alter brain waves, reduce cortisol, and initiate the activation of the brain-heart axis. By associating this breathing with a clear intention, such as peace, gratitude, forgiveness, or healing, an internal field is created, ready to access the sacred. Conscious breathing becomes a wordless prayer. Silent discipline is the third fundamental point. The mind, conditioned to react, judge, and project, resists silence. That's why regular practice, even if brief, is necessary. 10 minutes a day of contemplative prayer focused on silence and presence are more effective than hours of mechanical prayer. Regularity educates the nervous system, trains the mind for states of quietness, and strengthens the spiritual muscles. Over time, this silent space expands within consciousness until it becomes accessible amidst traffic, work, tension. The secret room, then, ceases to be a place and becomes a constant presence. Visualized prayer is another powerful tool for deepening this practical spirituality. Instead of just speaking or thinking, the practitioner is invited to visualize the desired reality in great detail. It's not about fantasizing, but creating an internal sensory experience so real that the body believes it's already happening. Visualizing oneself healed, at peace, fulfilled, bathed in light, or in direct contact with the divine activates brain areas responsible for direct experience. The brain does not distinguish between the real and the imagined when the emotion is authentic, and the repetition of these visualizations transforms the mind into a fertile field for miracles. Integrating prayer with conscious actions throughout the day is an even more advanced step. This means acting from the state that was cultivated in the secret room. If one has prayed for peace, then the words, decisions, and reactions during the day should reflect this peace. If one has prayed for healing, then food choices, thoughts, and relationships should express coherence with the desired health. This integration transforms spirituality into embodied behavior, into living faith. And it is this coherence between prayer and action that sustains the miracle, for the surrounding field responds to the maintained vibration, not just to the request made. Another practical key is anticipatory gratitude. Instead of praying from a place of lack, one prays as if they have already received. One gives thanks with a full heart, even before the manifestation. This gratitude, when genuine, is one of the highest vibrational states a human being can achieve. It signals to the field that the desired reality is already potentially present. And since the universe responds to the dominant vibration, the return is quicker and more harmonious. Gratitude transforms the supplicant into a mature co-creator who does not beg, but celebrates. This silent celebration opens invisible doors. Simplicity is, perhaps, the most underestimated secret of spiritual practice. It's not necessary to master terminologies, complex techniques, or exotic traditions. The most powerful prayer can be a profound silence, a sincere sigh, a look inward. The secret room is closer than one might think. It only takes a moment of surrender, a pause in the hustle and bustle, a careful listening to the heart. Access to the divine does not require effort, but presence. And this presence is cultivated with small daily habits that, when added together, build an unshakable inner temple. In addition to personal practice, it's essential to understand that spirituality is nourished by mindfulness. Being present in every act, while eating, walking, listening, breathing, transforms the ordinary into the sacred. Prayer doesn't end when the eyes open. It continues in the way one lives. Eating with awareness, listening with compassion, working with purpose, resting with surrender. All of this is prayer in action. This mindfulness is what makes life a constant field of conscious manifestation. It's in this state that one realizes that the miracle is not an isolated event, but a natural consequence of living in alignment with the Spirit. Cultivating a spiritual atmosphere at home also strengthens the practice. Uplifting music, inspiring readings, symbolic art, natural aromas, physical organization. All of this influences the vibrational field of the environment and facilitates access to the prayerful state. The secret room, when supported by a harmonious external space, manifests more easily. Creating simple rituals, such as lighting a candle, saying a morning prayer, giving thanks before sleeping, anchors the presence of the sacred in everyday life. The environment ceases to be just a physical space and becomes a nourishing energy field. Finally, it is crucial to remember that the secret room is a personal but also collective portal. Each being who accesses this state of presence contributes to the vibrational elevation of the whole. Every sincere prayer, every silence filled with love, every pure intention sent to the universe makes the world a more coherent place. Practical spirituality is, therefore, an act of invisible service. By transforming one's inner field, the collective field is also transformed. And when many access their secret room simultaneously, a new reality begins to emerge, silent, inevitable, and miraculous. As much as science advances in explaining the neural, biochemical, and vibrational mechanisms of prayer, there is a territory where knowledge still bows in silence, the territory of mystery. It is in this field that so-called miracles arise, extraordinary events that defy statistics, defy prognostications, defy human expectations, and that, even when analyzed under the rigor of scientific observation, remain shrouded in something that escapes linear comprehension. Stories of sudden healings, radical emotional transformations, remissions of terminal diseases, and synchronicities so precise that they border on the impossible make up a growing collection of reports that can no longer be ignored, and that, on the contrary, demand attention, investigation, and above all, openness. In hospitals around the world, especially those connected to spiritual and integrative research centers, doctors and scientists have documented cases of spontaneous healings that find no explanation in traditional medical protocols. One of the most respected institutions in this field is the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which has been collecting reports of phenomena considered paranormal or unexplainable for decades. The cases involve individuals who, after accessing states of deep prayer, mystical experiences, prolonged meditations, or acts of total surrender, experienced reversals of irreversible conditions, such as complete remissions of metastatic cancer, accelerated tissue reconstruction, disappearance of chronic lesions, and even organ regeneration. Many of these cures occur after moments of complete surrender. People who, in the face of despair, abandon all attempts at rational control and plunge into an absolute surrender to the divine. It's in this state of non-resistance that the body seems to receive a new code, a new piece of information that reorganizes cells, tissues, and entire systems. A widely documented example is the case of Anita Moorjani, who was diagnosed with terminal cancer and whose organs had already begun to fail. After a near-death experience where she accessed a state of expanded consciousness, she returned to her body, and within a few weeks, there were no more signs of the disease. Doctors reported the remission as impossible in the light of conventional medicine. Cases like hers are not isolated. Dr. Larry Dossey, a physician and researcher, has compiled hundreds of documented reports of healings attributed to intercessory prayer, the kind made by others, often at a distance, without the patient's knowledge. His studies reveal that even when the patient is unaware they are being prayed for, their recovery tends to be faster, less painful, and with fewer side effects. This suggests that prayer has a non-local component, a reach that transcends space and time, operating on levels not fully understood by traditional science. At Duke University, a study conducted by Dr. Harold Koenig examined the relationship between spirituality, health, and hospital recovery. The data revealed that patients with regular spiritual practice, especially those who cultivated states of gratitude, compassion, and daily prayer, showed significantly faster recovery, greater adherence to treatment, lower relapse rates, and better immunological indicators. Most impressively, these effects persisted even when controlling for variables such as diet, exercise, or socioeconomic conditions. The spiritual factor emerged as a consistent and measurable differentiator. Another study, conducted by researchers from Harvard Medical School, observed the impact of meditation and contemplative prayer on genes related to chronic inflammation, immunity, and cellular aging. After just 8 weeks of regular practice, participants exhibited favorable epigenetic changes, including the activation of genes linked to longevity and the silencing of genes associated with oxidative stress. This indicates that spiritual practice not only operates on a subjective level, but directly influences genetic expression, one of the biggest mysteries and promises of modern medicine. In addition to physical healing, there are emotional and mental miracles. Individuals with deep histories of depression, severe anxiety, complex traumas, or psychiatric disorders have reported abrupt transformations following profound prayer experiences. In many cases, these individuals underwent states of spiritual ecstasy where they were overtaken by an indescribable presence of love, compassion, and forgiveness. The impact of these experiences was so profound that old patterns of thought were literally erased, giving way to a new emotional identity. These cases, increasingly reported in integrative clinics and therapeutic spaces, challenge the idea that emotional healing needs to always be slow and gradual. Synchronicities are also part of the miracle spectrum. People report unlikely encounters, highly meaningful coincidences, accurate signs, and direct responses to silently made prayers. Many of these synchronicities involve numbers, words, music, dreams, symbols, or events that fit together with such absurd precision that they transcend the idea of chance. Prayer seems to activate an invisible organizing intelligence, which aligns elements of everyday life in a way to confirm, guide, and sustain the one who is awake. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, the manifestation of the collective unconscious or the universal field in response to the connected soul. There are also documented records of people who, during deep prayer or mystical experiences, accessed information they could not have through normal means, such as unknown languages, medical, geographical, or historical knowledge that later proved to be true. This phenomenon, known as spontaneous clairvoyance or hyperintuition, has been studied by neuroscientists like Mario Beauregard, who believes that the brain can act as a receptor for information from the non-local field when in altered states of consciousness. This gives rise to the hypothesis that deep prayer, in addition to healing, also expands the human mind to capacities previously considered supernatural. Miracles also manifest in the collective body. There are records of entire populations positively affected by movements of prayer, meditation, and collective intentions. During the civil war in Lebanon, for example, an experiment organized by trained meditators demonstrated that during periods when the group meditated for peace, rates of violence, accidents, and hospitalizations significantly decreased. When the meditation was interrupted, the numbers began to rise again. The data was published in peer-reviewed scientific journals, and the results are still considered one of the greatest indications of the direct influence of consciousness on social reality. These phenomena, although still shrouded in mystery, can no longer be dismissed as anecdotes or exaggerations. There is a growing body of empirical evidence, reported, recorded, and published, pointing to a latent force within the human being, a force that is activated by prayer, nourished by intention, and sustained by surrender. The miracle from this perspective is the return to original harmony. It occurs when there is alignment between spirit, mind, and body, and when resistance gives way to profound trust. Science may not explain all aspects, but it already confirms that something real happens when a human being tunes into the field of the sacred. Therefore, miracles are not fictions, exaggerations, or collective delusions. They are expressions of a universal intelligence that responds to the vibration of the human soul when it is in a state of pure alignment. And the more we investigate, the more we realize that the miracle is not something outside of nature, but rather nature fully restored. A healed body, a pacified mind, a transformed life, all of this is a sign that the being has rediscovered its original frequency. And when this happens, what was once impossible becomes inevitable. Because the miracle, ultimately, is the sign that the divine has been recognized within the depths of the being. Humanity is crossing a threshold. After centuries of separation between faith and reason, between the visible and the invisible, between the laboratory and the temple, we now live in a time where the boundaries begin to dissolve. What was once considered metaphysical, mysterious, or purely spiritual, now finds correspondence in data, graphs, brain images, and precise measurements. Prayer, this ancestral and seemingly simple gesture, reveals itself as a technology of consciousness capable of activating latent resources in the human being, reorganizing the internal reality, and impacting, in a concrete way, the outside world. The science of miracles is not a contradiction. It is the confirmation that the spirit also has structure, functioning, and intelligence. An intelligence that is beginning to be mapped, understood, and above all, accessed. The new spirituality does not oppose science, it expands it, and science, in turn, does not threaten the sacred. It reveals it in new dimensions. Deep prayer, when observed through neuroimaging, heart rate measurement, brainwave analysis, and cell biology, proves to be a tool for radical transformation. We are not talking about blind belief, but about measurable states of coherence, neuroplasticity, regeneration, vibrational alignment, and resonance with the quantum field. Each time a human being enters the secret room, they reconnect with a source of energy and information that transcends their limited identity, and in doing so, they become more than a body, more than a mind. They become a point of access to the infinite. This access point is internal. And the more humanity tries to seek outside answers for its crises, whether they are emotional, existential, ecological, social, or spiritual, the more it reveals the need for a return to the center. The true miracle of the new age will not be a spectacular event in the sky, but the mass rediscovery of the power contained within the human heart. The secret room, an ancient and powerful metaphor, represents this inner sovereignty. When each individual learns to access this space with regularity, stability, and emotional maturity, the outer world inevitably changes. because reality is not something that imposes itself from the outside. It is something that resonates with what we vibrate from within. This silent revolution is already underway. Millions of people around the globe are awakening to practices that, until recently, were reserved for monks and spiritual masters. Meditation, contemplative prayer, guided visualizations, conscious breathing, spiritual fasting, deliberate gratitude, devotional practices. All of this has become common language among individuals who, previously trapped in a materialistic paradigm, now glimpse another layer of reality. And this layer is not inferior to physical reality. It is, in many respects, the matrix that sustains it. Spirituality, when understood as the science of vibration and the field, becomes a discipline as precise as physics, as complex as biology, and as essential as medicine. The schools of the future, and there are already some in the present, will teach children how to breathe correctly, how to quiet the mind, how to identify emotions, and dissolve trauma patterns through awareness. They will be trained not only to operate in the external world, but to govern the internal one. Emotional literacy will be as important as reading words. Attention management will be one of the pillars of education. And prayer, stripped of dogmas and open to plurality, will be presented as a practice of connection with the source, whether it is understood as God, as consciousness, as the unified field, or as life in its essence. Spirituality, integrated with science, will give birth to a new humanity. This new humanity will be characterized not by its external technologies, but by its inner sovereignty. It will be composed of people who know how to access peace even amidst chaos. Those who recognize the divine in every breath. Those who understand that healing is not just restoring the body, but harmonizing with the deepest truth. Those who do not wait for external miracles, but become conscious channels of the continuous miracle that is life. This humanity will not be perfect, but it will be awake. And an awakened mind is capable of altering everything around it without needing to convince, convert, or dominate. The union between science and spirit will also bring profound implications in the way we deal with health, economy, politics, and the environment. A conscious humanity knows that its vibration affects the collective. It knows that its prayer is not isolated. It is a code sent to the invisible fabric that connects all beings. It knows that the individual miracle reverberates like a wave in the universal field. And for this reason, it prays, meditates, breathes, and acts with vibrational responsibility. It knows that every sustained emotion, every nurtured thought, every emitted intention, shapes the common reality. And for this reason, it seeks coherence. Coherence between heart and mind, between word and gesture, between desire and presence. The science of miracles does not eliminate the mystery. It merely shows that the mystery can be experienced even more deeply, that the sacred does not need to be explained to be real, that the invisible is not absence, its origin, and that prayer, at the end of the day, is the original language of the soul. When a human being silences, breathes, surrenders, and feels the presence of the eternal, they are activating within themselves the memory of a time when everything was one. And in this state, there is no conflict, no disease, no separation. There is only communion, and it is from this communion that the new is born. The true evolution will not be technological, it will be spiritual. It will be the awakening of the consciousness that we are more than flesh, more than stories, more than desires or memories. We are manifestations of an intelligence that seeks to recognize itself in us. And each prayer is a spark of this recognition. Science can measure waves, fields, impulses, neurotransmitters. But what drives all this is a breath that still eludes instruments. This breath is the conscious intention to touch the divine. It is the silent gesture of one who enters the secret room, closes the door to distraction, and plunges into the sanctuary of being. This journey has no end, because the Spirit is infinite, and the more you journey inward, the more you discover there is no fixed center, only deeper layers of truth, more subtle, more luminous. Prayer is not a destination, but a gateway that renews with every breath. And the miracle is not a rare event, It's the natural state of being for those who live in alignment. The new humanity is already among us. It doesn't shout, doesn't impose, doesn't debate. It breathes, listens, feels, transforms. And when you, upon closing your eyes, decide to enter your secret room, you not only access the divine, you manifest it. Because the miracle is, always has been, and always will be within you. And now, Mind Unfettered, I want to hear from you. What was the most profound moment when you felt that prayer truly changed something, within or outside of you? Share here in the comments. Your story may spark a miracle in someone else. Let's create a collective vibrational field of manifestation and consciousness, because when many align, the impossible reorganizes. And if you felt the power of this journey, the next step awaits you right now on your screen. The Book of 33 Steps, the Hidden Map, Jesus left for enlightenment. A deep dive into the hidden clues left by Jesus, a true inner map for the awakening of consciousness. Click now, take a deep breath and continue with me. The journey is just beginning.